All right, so welcome to Artsists Talks. It is an honor for us to have you here in this program. Also here with Juan Alberto Gavilla.
Well, great to see you, Linda, again. And thank you for accepting our invitation. Tell us a little bit about your background. You graduated. When did you get into photography? You workshops? Please.
I started in photography because I had an opportunity to spend a summer at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. It was a big workshop place where speakers went, and my parents let me go because the Presbyterian Church ran it. Okay, but they had like Chicano leadership conferences, all this cool stuff. So my college study was to be a lawyer, to defend my parents. My father was a disabled war veteran. My mother experienced workplace problems. And after school, I worked as a law assistant. But when I went to Ghost Ranch, I also participated in the play. And the day of the play, I had 104 fever. And so I didn't get to be in the play. And so the director from New York City gave me a 2.25 Leica Rolly camera. And he said, why don't you take pictures of the cast? That was over for me. That was all that was left. So the next day, we're invited to Georgia O'Keeffe, who had her ranch on Ghost Ranch, for the luncheon for the students. And she sees me with this camera around my neck. And she says to me, oh, why don't you go out to my private backyard? Here, walk out here and see what the spirits tell you. I'm walking around with the camera. I turned it around. I made my first self-portrait. And I said, I'm going to become a photographer. I mean, it was over that summer. I knew it was for me. Then I went back to West Virginia University, where they said the only photo class is in the School of Journalism. So you have to switch to be a journalist.
Yes.
So I did that. And well, just one little side experience was that right away, I wasn't really a photojournalist. I was an artist, because the first assignment was to photograph the environment. So I brought a man with a loincloth to run in front of the famous falling water architecture that was nearby by Frank Lloyd Wright. And it was in the Wash, if any of you remember that, before you had digital. Yeah. And the professor said, Professor Ash, whose picture is this? And I said, me. And he said, this kind of nudity doesn't belong in photojournalism. This is out and you must redo the assignment. So right then, I knew where my path was going.
That's fantastic. Can we touch a little bit about, the first time, and that's why, we went and we met so many times in PhotoFest, and I remember like the interviews you had, like with people, mothers who own a beauty palace, and her son was with AIDS, and she had to close the beauty palace because nobody was going.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
This is a great question, because it segues, because the TB/AIDS diary I saw as both fulfilling something in the photojournalism world, as informing, and as being art, because I made two sizes. One, a small size that could go in health centers and places like that. And the other, I made 20 by 24 color Polaroid. So the theme was that my mother had TB in the 30s. And she was told by people, my father should not marry her, that she would not be able to bring him a baby, that she would be a weak woman, many, many things that did not turn out for TB people who had an arrested TB. And then, so when the AIDS situation was about, for me, it was about stigma. People weren't being fed in hospitals, doctors didn't want to take care of people. And so with a lot of search, I got a diary of a mother whose son died of AIDS. And she was stigmatized because she was a hairdresser. And none of her clients wanted to go to her anymore because they were afraid somehow AIDS, would be in the shampoo. And so she started a Mother of AIDS group. And then she sent me all her letters. So I had my mother's pictures of her doctors at the sanitarium, and I had my mother's diary of her experience, and then the mother of a son who eventually died of AIDS, who experienced all these stigmas. And I combined the two. And somewhere around the time we met, I also planned to go to Arles Photo Festival. So I had the text about each picture done in French, Spanish, and German, preparing myself. And I met you somewhere in that. Somewhere between that, which you loved, but then you also were interested in finding someone who could do fashion. And when you were looking at the TV diary, it didn't look like fashion, but it looked like something that your country, since I had the Spanish, you could do something with.
And also that exhibition was part of the biennial in Cuba too.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. And the most famous writer of a hundred years of solitude.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah, he came to my opening. And then he also brought me for tea or Coca-Cola out on the little patio. I mean, what could be?
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Not only that happened, the next thing was banging on my door were a bunch of young people who said that there were people being quarantined with AIDS and that I had to come with them right away in their car and they would get me in to take pictures. And I was sort of thinking, well, tomorrow is my lecture and opening, So I if I were just a journalist, maybe I would have been on my way because that did happen there. But
and your connections with German curators, would you please expand a little bit because it's connected with Upholder and the Bauhaus?
Yeah, Germany, before it became so conceptualized, actually had quite a few collectors of all kinds of photography. And when I was in Cuba, I met the director of the Contemporary Museum of Photography in Aachen. And he invited me, which at the same time I was working on the TV AIDS diary, I had begun my Healing Waters.
Exactly, Healing Waters.
And so I was on that search. So when people brought me places for the TV AIDS diary, I would look on the map and I would say, oh, there's a hot spring nearby. Will you arrange, a couple days there, or how can we work this out? And I was building that work, but the museum gave me a very big one-person show on the Healing Waters pictures. And then at the same time, we had Arles happening. And I went to one of the first Arles happenings along with the beginning of our Photo Fest years. And there I met Natalie Emprin, who had a gallery in Paris. And I had a 10-year relationship with her. And the museum in Germany brought my entire frame show to Paris. And this started a long relationship before now Paris Photo is so in. I had all those years going back and forth, having exhibitions.
How did you work this Upholder thing? Because, your very minimalistic approach to fashion.
So actually, I already had a show it's called the Hygiene Museum in Germany. I already had a show at what's called a photo gallery Frankfurt, where my work was collected. I already had things going on, but one of the things that showed the way I could deal with people, and I'm going to read a quote from you, if you don't mind. You say, Linda's teaching brings a spark of authenticity to the dialogue between photographer and sitter. I think that the committee at the Upholder Museum had seen by then my Healing Waters book, which includes women in the water and communication. And by then, my Erotic Lives of Women book, which we haven't gotten to, which a number of the women were German, but from other places. And there's another book, 100 Seasons of Tuscany of the East, that I also published in Germany. All of these connections were coming to me from this region. Okay, so then there's this Upholder Museum, which is a serious museum with a board and a budget. And why would they pick Linda Troeller to do a fashion project? So Klaus Bohm, one of the members, he, I think, used your quote, the spark of authenticity I have between a sitter, that I could make something with the winning clothes that was unique. And that's what they were looking for. They're an art museum, they're not a fashion museum. And the purpose of the Upholder Prize was back, before the wall fell, it was a textile town. And then they brought me to choose the location, to choose the models, and to choose the hair and makeup. And then I came back in February. They had a budget back in the day when there were budgets. And I came back in February and photographed the first one at the spa that was owned by one of the board members. But the next year, I picked a castle and I did the same thing. I went, I found the location, I found the models. And the third year was I went digital. Okay, and this is the work that you saw, which you said, interestingly enough, how minimal it was. Well, this year, their sponsor was for Geek Magazine. Okay, so I had now, people on the set with me. Not only, I still got to pick the hair, the makeup, I got to pick the winning clothes I wanted to choose. And this time I had chosen this old Bauhaus building that was used for raves with all kinds of stuff, big space. And I use natural light. I use, light discs for the glamour end of it. But one of my pictures was going to be one of those long spaces where you see a bunch of trees. And at the end of the trees, I was going to have the models, because not everything was just inside the building. So the woman director said, "We do not do brown." And I said, "Like, what do you mean?" She said, "There's brown earth. Their feet will be on brown earth." And I said, "Oh God, you don't do brown." Okay, so I learned a lesson long ago. It was called the Linda Troeller fit. I mean, I just started crying and ran upstairs, said I wasn't going to do anymore. Everything was over, because it was really frightening actually. So what happened was I began working more with them, like incorporating their ideas. They said, "Well, why don't you maybe hang the clothes on a clothesline? And what about that empty bench over there?" And I was like, there's not even a weed next to the bench, but it's green. And so, I think I really repositioned myself a bit with their help. And it was a very successful catalog. In fact, I signed that with the year that they had Karl Lagerfeld be the exhibitor at the Upholder Museum. And you saw that work, you saw that catalog.
Because then it came, Colombian chapter.
So I put this picture first. This is one of the students I had model for the class, but it mixed my love of water and color and simplicity. So I thought that's a good place to start, because one of the special things about working with Colombia is you're not just a teacher all the time or useful for the betterment of the society. You're also really recognized for what you do yourself as an artist. There you can see the 3 fashion catalogs and some other work that I had done that led to having the chance to work with these students. They were very open. There were a new generation of students. They had their first digital cameras, most of them. If they didn't, they had point and shoots. They were already attuned to being culturally aware. So, they were looking forward to this. So
yes,
they were well prepared. They studied illustration. I met some of the other professors. In fact, there was a welcome dinner by the chef of the school that was like nothing I'd ever had before. We really, it set the tone to work well together. This is the Collegiate Torah group, and we were given a house. I believe it was Tres Patios, but we could do a shoot indoors. We had a model, and the way we did it is each person worked individually with the model in a room by themselves, and we didn't watch what they did. They had their own opportunity. And then outside, I like to talk about shooting, outside in the landscape rather than just in the studio. Alejandra Betancourt, she took a picture. You can see that dress. The students were able to, in such a hurried time, to be part of the show, Branding Your Fashion with Art, because we were able to use this kind of ad hoc way to hang their work, but they were able to get their work done in time and be part of the show, which made it just such a bigger event.
Orgasms. Could you please expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. So that was another thing that happened on this trip. The Moravia trip, I think. Yeah, there's the cover. Again, yourself and other curators and friends said, what else are you working on? What's your personal project? And I said, well, I'm working on my second book. After I worked on Erotic Lives of Women, I found out that there was a lot of information that's never been uncovered about women's orgasmic life. And I want to work on that. And, my reaction from you and other people was, yeah, if you want to include Colombians, I had like 20 other countries. Why not work on that here while I was there? And so if people would like to know exactly who I'm talking about, they can buy the book. But I thought the best idea was to read the 2 comments from 2 Colombians without their names, if you think that's okay.
It's okay.
Sure.
So the first person, she said, in my country, women talk about sexuality, but they put too much attention on the man rather than themselves. Okay. This would be about 2013 or 12, she said that. And shortly after that, we had the Me Too movement, which was kind of slowed my book down a bit because everybody needed to be against everything. A lot of issues came up, but I think she probably was right because more attention is being paid now on women, on how they fit in the society, how they fit as artists. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, it's great to know those concepts, and especially with the Me Too issue. I think how this book is got its to be known, because to learn about women's way of expressing themselves and not to be completely raised by our patriarchal society. Tell us, expand a lot about the Chelsea Hotel, please.
So when I moved in '94, there were still a few, luminaries. There were still bands that came and played. Herbert Huncke, the beat poet, was there. I could meet people. And, like one of my early stories and why I made a book about it was that one day the beat poet had said to me, listen, Linda, if you ever don't feel right or something, just go in the lobby, sit there for a little bit, walk outside, have a smoke or walk around, come back in and sit in the lobby and your life will change. I'm telling you that. So like one day I was like, today's not going right. I think I'll do that. So I sat back down in the lobby, and the bellhop said to me, listen, this is Alexander McQueen, the fashion designer. He's having his big show tonight. And he heard that this was an artist hotel where artists talk to each other. So, Linda, this is Anna. And he and I started talking. Before you know it, we were up in my room. He was looking through my Healing Waters pictures. He was trying to figure out how maybe I could be part of his next fashion show in Paris. And this was how things went. Or I would be on my way to a photography opening, and Nicola, the French woman at the end of the hall, would say, but tonight is an incredible performance in Soho. Just, get your bag and come with me, and we'll go in the cab. And, this just doesn't happen in a regular life. I mean, it's not happening anymore, but it was very meaningful. So then I started to take more pictures of these kinds of events. These were not the famous people that, branded the hotel, but the next level, and there still will be, hopefully, a new level. So my work fills in the gaps, you might say, between some of the famous people and the mood and the architecture and things like that. And of course, there is the first book that I made, which I don't know whether I can hold it up, but
Yes.
it's called Hotel Chelsea Atmosphere, for which you wrote the introduction. And it was the first blurb book. Imagine that. It was like the first or second ever blurb book, and the New York Times did a full page about that book. And it was really a great thing for my career and for my project. But, it wasn't distributed nationally. So then after that, after some years of fighting with the owners, I worked towards getting another book. And what happened was my room, the room that you met me in, that landlord who had bought the hotel wanted an elevator there. And there was no way to win. So he tried. He said that I hadn't lived in the room 180 days, because I think you remember I traveled a lot. I love my career, going everywhere. But I had been to a gym, logged in 181 days. So they couldn't get me on that. But eventually, they were going to win. So what they did is they knocked my entire floor down so that all kinds of mold got in my eyes. And my husband, it did not bother him, but I was sensitive to it, so much so that the eye doctor across the street said, your eyes are the worst of anybody from the hotel who's come here. You have to get out. So that was it. I mean, the ending was they paid the lawyer's bill. I didn't get any money. I got out. And other people, there are 30 people still in the hotel who are on the first floor or the fourth floor. They didn't have issues. They were able to be moved around while the second owner took over. And then by then I moved to the East Village. Now there is a third owner. And so I wouldn't give up. The second owner promised me the book would come out, which you saw it did, Living in the Chelsea Hotel in 2015.
Yes.
But the hotel didn't work out. And so even though it was in the bookstores, there was no big press about it, because it was only sad press. What happened to Ethan Hawke? What happened to all the famous people? And they can't save this hotel. So then a Leica gallery curator, Paris Chang, also saw a spark in my photography. And she said, I want to give you a show in Los Angeles with this work. And since the early work is taken with the old Leica, we'd like you to have shooting something more contemporary that people could buy. So, and there's Stanley Bard, who was the big aficionado of the hotel with Christo and his wife, Jean-Claude, who both lost. Anyway, what happened was I finally got the new Leica camera in 2018. And they said I had it for a week. you never saw somebody work so fast. I went on a Sunday morning around 6 a.m. and slipped in underneath like the guard and got in to shoot. And then during the week, I had appointments with 3 or 4 photographers, and you will be able to see at the end of this series, the Leica Q is 40 megapixels. It's quite a handy camera, and I made portraits of 2 or 3 of the very important people that are still there, including Man Lai, who owns many of the artifacts of the hotel and has a dream that if the hotel ever does open, that she would be able to make her room like a little museum. And by the way, this picture that's up there now is my friend Marion Schneider and a man who was staying in the hotel, because the New York Times book review did a story about me, and the head editor wanted me to do a book on the erotic lives of men. And I did shoot 5 men there at the hotel, but I never got a book deal. So the hotel was, it just always kept me motivated. But anyway, finally the show came last 2019, just before COVID, in Los Angeles. It was an incredible hotel. You were in the El Quixote restaurant, which was in the Chelsea Hotel, and it was famous for the Manhattan drinks. Out in Los Angeles at this fabulous Leica gallery, she had Manhattans with the cherries. It really created the mood, and it brought out so many people who had drifted to California, but really their heart was still in New York.
Yeah.
But the real story of this destruction, as you can see in the self-portrait, that all the glass windows were burned out, knocked out. It's still in a state of confusion, and there's no date set for it to open. It's a very sad story.
Well, you managed to at least to keep that landmark patrimony because of your eye, so I think it will stay there. And now it's still not open, right?
No, it's not renovated completely yet. They might get the restaurant open. I hope they do. I think it has a couple of years, but as time goes by, like Patti Smith is now 75 years old. She has a little blog. She does some concerts with her daughter. Some of these names and people that help make the hotel function. The idea that when you stayed in a hotel and there were real live people living their active art lives, and you came in and you met them, it was such more interesting than a hotel that will just have people coming and going and remember that it was art, or try to be an artist there, because you won't be able to stay for a month unless you're a millionaire. It's just going to be something different. So it must be remembered. And the biggest reason is that people always say, oh, I wish I could have lived somewhere like that, where there were artists around each other. This show it's in storage in Leica after COVID. It's boxed up and it's ready. It had 3 shows that were canceled. I have not yet found the next place. I'm hoping maybe to get in touch with Leica Munich. I've written quite a few people. Things are opening up. There still might be a place where it can travel to and make its story known.
Well,
it is interesting to have it in mind. I don't know when it's going to happen, but as you said, like budgets are getting down and they don't exist anymore. So we have to invent life again. But yeah, I think this selection and this collection of images of the Chelsea tells a lot of that atmosphere of creative people doing things together. Is fascinating.
So we wanted to thank you so much for your time and for telling us all these advices to young photographers, and we enjoy just going through your work.
Fascinating stories. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing this. This is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Bye.